Now, as it turns out, this metadata has a formal name. It's called YAML front matter. So if I want to parse and reference these values from within a PHP project, I might start by saying YAML front matter PHP. Okay, and right off the bat, it looks like the team at Spotsy has a package here. Now, if we scroll down, yeah, have a look. This is exactly what we're doing. You declare your metadata and then the post below it. Then it looks like we grab the file, we pass it to this method, and then in response, we can either call a body method to get the body of the post, or you call this matter method to get all of the metadata. And then finally, it looks like there's magic property access. So if I were to try to get the title property, that should cascade down and give me the title metadata attribute. Okay, exactly what we need. So we can install it through Composer, like this. I'll paste it in, and now we have it. So check this out. If we go back to our routes file, for now, let's just comment this out. We're going to treat the homepage route as a playground. It looks like we had that YAML front matter class, and notice we now have access to that because we installed it through Composer. Now we had parse, it looks like there's also a parse file. And my guess is behind the scenes, that just runs file get contents. It's a shortcut. Okay, so that means we only need to give it the path to the file that we want to parse. All right, well, here it is. So resource path posts my fourth post. All right, so that's going to give us some kind of document and response. So why don't we die and dump it and have a look. So back to Firefox, we'll give this a refresh, and there you go. So we have a document object, here's the body, and then here's the matter. And this is your metadata. All right, so that means if we play around real quick, I could say, give me the body of this file. There we go. Or I could say, give me the metadata, and we get that array. I think we can also give it an attribute name. Yep. Or, like we mentioned, it also has that magic property access. So if I simply said document title, that's a little nicer to write, and we get the same thing. So there's the title, there's the excerpt, and here's the publish date. This is exactly what we need. Okay, so now, how would we parse all of these files? Well, again, think of this as our playground. Anything we add here doesn't necessarily stay here. So, well, let's see, we had that post class, right? Why don't we grab this, bring it back to our playground, and we already know this allows us to, and I can remove that, this allows us to fetch all of the files in the post directory. So your next thought might be, well, let's loop over it. For each file, why don't we run that YAML front matter parse file method and then give it the file? But it sounds like we will want an array of these parsed files. So again, as a first step, you might start with an array, and then for each item in the loop, you push to that array. Finally, if we die and dump, and we have another look, we have an array of 4 items for each document. But now here's the deal. We could, at this point, do something equivalent to this, where you load your post view and then you pass it like this. But we're passing Spotsy document objects to our view. And really, I want to pass my own post object to the view. How can we do that? How can we wrap the results of this up in my own class? Okay, well, let's see what we can do here. We do add this post class, and we now know that the fields for a post right now are title, excerpt, date, and then the body itself. So why don't we instantiate a post and pass it the title, the excerpt, the published date, and then finally the body of the post. And then finally, I can quickly whip up the constructor like that. And by the way, if you're using PHP 8, you could use constructor assignment if you want. Okay, so now that I know what a post is, have a look at this. We'll go back to our routes file. And now instead of creating a documents array, well, like I said, I really want a posts array. So for each iteration of the loop, we're still passing the results of this to the post array, which again is the document. Does that make it a little more clear? I don't want that. I want to pass a new post object. And now we just have to give the constructor what it requires: title, excerpt, date, and body. Now have a look at this. I could say document title, and notice when I call title, once again, that is coming from here. Let's do the rest. Document title, excerpt, date and body. Excerpt, date, and then we call that body method. Okay, so have a look. This time, if we dump it again, and I give it a refresh, so now I have an array of not the Spotsy document objects, but instead post objects that I am in control of. Now real quick, notice those are blank. That's only because I didn't add metadata. So let's see. Yeah, there's the only one we added metadata to, and we can access it here. So with that in mind, let's quickly switch back and update some of these. Like that. Okay, so now if I give it a refresh, all of those should have metadata, and they do. Okay, so check this out. This is getting kind of cool. If I now go back to my routes file, think about it. I could now say, give me the first post in this array. And of course, we get a post instance. I could say, give me the title of the post. There we go. And again, give me the excerpt, give me the body. All of that is available now. So when I pass it to our view, and again, we're going to throw this in that post class, but we just wanted it here for our playground while we're learning. Anyhow, if I come back and give this a refresh, we're going to have to make a couple changes. You remember that before, we were echoing out post because at the time it was a big block of HTML. But not anymore. Post is an object. So let's go to our view. And now, check this out. We have more control. I can declare here how a heading should appear and whether it should link somewhere or not and what metadata it should have. Post title. All right, cross your fingers, give it a refresh, and now we're in business. Let's keep going. Maybe below it you have something like a div where you spit out the post body. All right, come on back, refresh, and there we go. But now notice, I don't actually want the full body of the post. I want the excerpt. And now we have a way to grab that. Post excerpt, which again was defined here. And granted, I think the excerpt could be a little longer than that, but you get the idea. Okay, so now if I switch on back, the H1 can link to the post in question by saying post slash, and then, well, actually, we need something there. Often you'll have an ID, or often you'll have a slug. So we want some kind of equivalent of my first post to link to. So let's see, we probably want post slug. And then within the anchor tag would be the title. All right, we know it's not going to work, so I give that a refresh and it blows up because there is no slug property. That's our next step. Let's come back to post. A post now requires a slug, and I will initialize that. And I'm just making these public to be quick here. Now, one option would be to automate this. So for example, if the title is my first post, we could translate that or slugify it into my first post. And that might be a useful default. But at least for now, why don't we just declare it as the metadata? Because sometimes you'll want the slug to be different than the title. So let's give them that option. My first post, and that'll do it. So now we just have to pass that slug like so. All right, back to Firefox, give it a refresh. And now each of these will link, have a look down here in the status bar. My first post, my fourth, my second, my third. And then of course, we'll need to update this page as well to use that post object. Right now, it's still using file get contents, and that will include, of course, the metadata. But don't worry, we can easily switch that over. But before we do, this is looking pretty good, but I think we can clean it up even more using something known as collections. Collections are a feature provided by Laravel that's sort of like arrays on steroids. It gives you a more object-oriented syntax for calling all sorts of methods. If you want to iterate over things, or map over them, or filter them, or combine them, or merge them, all of these things you can access with Laravel's collection component. Let's work our way toward that direction. Now in this case, I think we touched on this in the last episode, but if you ever find yourself looping over something and then ultimately building up a different array, that might be an indication that you can instead use array map, like this. Map over all of the files, and here's right here, the thing to which you're mapping. And instead of building up a new array, I'm just going to return that like so. So in this case, we would return a new post. And we, of course, can't forget to parse it. This would be a similar approach, but it would allow me to get rid of all of that and that as well. And if you want to make sure it works, it does. A slightly cleaner way to go about it. But now if we tried Laravel's collection approach, let's see what that would look like. Laravel offers this helper function called collect that will collect an array and wrap it within a collection object. And that will allow you to do all the things you're used to. If you want to map over every item in your array, or filter them down, or simply loop over them, or add things, or pull things. Again, all of that stuff is available. So why don't we collect this array of files, and then we want to map over them like this. And for each file, and I'm going to copy this again and bring it on up. And then finally, we could save that to posts. Now, notice that this and what you see here are functionally identical. They do the exact same thing. So you can use either approach, but I think if you stick with it, you're really going to appreciate using collections. Now, if I were to get rid of this one, let's give it another shot. And of course, we still get the same thing. Now, a little more cleanup. I'm only using this files variable once, so I'm happy to inline that here. And that looks good. Next, if you want to get a little fancy, we could map twice. So just come along for the ride here. And actually on that note, from my experiences, collections are an acquired taste. Once you're fluent in them, you can't imagine going back. But until then, sometimes you might think, oh, this is more confusing than it was before. And no, it's not more confusing, but it's new to you, and things that are new are a little confusing until you understand them. In the same way that the array map function was confusing until you understood it. And the same is true here. So anyways, if we map once, why don't we, for each item, return a document? And then from that point, when we call map here, we're not mapping over the file objects, we're now mapping over those documents. So for each document, build up a post. And that'll do the exact same thing. So now have a look. If I upgrade these to arrow functions in the same here, and this is what we get. And really, it's easy for me to read. Find all of the files in the post directory and collect them into a collection, and then loop over or map over each item, and for each one, parse that file into a document. Once you then have a collection of documents, map over it a second time. And this time we're going to build up our own post object that we are in control of. And then finally, we'll pass that to the view. Okay, so now I'm done with my playground. I do want to bring this back to post all, like we worked on in the last episode. So let's go to the all method, replace this like so. And again, a little longer, we're going to keep this here, but there's no reason why you need to parse all of this for every single page request. This is the sort of thing you do one time and then you cache it. So we'll return this, and yeah, I think we're all set to go. Back to my routes file. We can once again inline this. We're back to everything being nice and descriptive. I go back to Firefox, and that works as well. Okay, so now we're running high on time for this video. Let's just update this as well. This time, when we load a view, we call this find method. And that method, yep, we're not taking that approach anymore. So I can delete that entirely. What are we trying to do here? Well, it's something like, of all the blog posts, find the one with a slug that matches the one that was requested, which is right there. Okay, well, to start, we could grab all the blog posts at least until they're cached. So I could say static all, and that will give me all of our blog posts. And then we can say posts. Remember, this is a collection now. And I could say, give me the first one, and there we go. First where. Give me the first post where the slug equals the slug we were given. So let's have a look. If I die and dump what is returned there and give it a refresh, we grab the post we requested. Let's come back and go to my fourth post and notice it grabbed that one as well. Okay. We can return that and once again, inline this and remove the comment. And that ends up being a little cleaner too. That will be returned from this call where we then load a view. And once again, we have to update this as well. This will simply be an h1 with the post title. And then within a div, we'll have the post body, not the excerpt, the full body. And with any luck, give it a refresh, and there we go. We have what we worked on a few episodes ago, but now this is dynamic, and we are storing it in a file-based database.